All right. Hello, hello, everybody. We are back for our final episode. It's kind of two episodes, but not really. Our last reading for our reading of the Odyssey. So this episode is called Penelope's Test. So Odysseus has finished what he came there to do, right? He made it all the way back home. That was the whole purpose of the first half of the Odyssey, just getting home. And now he's rid his house of all of these nasty suitors and overcome that part. But there's one more step for him to really do, which is to properly reunite with his wife, Penelope, who's been waiting for him for 20 years. And the last time they spoke, they didn't really speak as husband and wife. It was Odysseus still in disguise as this old beggar man, and Penelope not knowing how her husband was, where her husband was, or that she was even talking to him. So this episode is called Penelope's Test. It's not called, husband, wife, smoochy, smoochy, honey, I missed you, which is, after you've been away from your husband or wife for a really long time, of course, there's some lovey-dovey reuniting that's meant to happen, right? But this episode is called Penelope's Test. So I want you to pay attention for where in this episode you're going to see Penelope testing Odysseus and why she might feel the need to do that. So later on in the episode, we'll discuss why it is you think that Penelope feels the need to test Odysseus. But for now, let's just get started with some reading. So I'll share my screen with you per usual. You can also read along on your own if you would like. And we are about to read Penelope's Test. I'll make it a little bigger for you. Here we go. Okay. Penelope's Test. Penelope tests Odysseus to prove that he really is her husband. Great-hearted Odysseus, home at last, was being bathed now by Eurynomy and rubbed with golden oil and clothed again in a fresh tunic and a cloak. Athena lent him beauty, head to foot. She made him taller and massive too, with crisping hair and curls like petals of wild hyacinth, but all red golden. Think of gold infused on silver by a craftsman whose fine art Hephaestus taught him, or Athena, one whose work moves to delight. Just so she lavished beauty over Odysseus's head and shoulders. He sat then in the same chair by the pillar facing his silent wife and said, pause really quick right there. There was an epic simile in that section. It's talking about how after all the fighting was done, Odysseus is getting cleaned up, he's having a nice bath, and then something happens there with him involving his appearance. That should give you a hint about what the epic simile is. So take a look at this first section that we just read, and I want you to tell me in this epic simile what two things are being compared and what is that word or phrase that is being used to show that this is in fact an epic simile. Okie dokie. So hopefully you saw that in that section, Athena is beautifying Odysseus. He's been through some stuff, man. Like he's been out away at war and traveled the sea. He's probably all, windburned and stuff, and then just fought like 100 people. So he has had a rough go of it. It's been 20 years since he's seen his wife. So Athena lends him beauty, and it talks about how he looks, or how the beauty that she is gifting him with compares with like a beautiful silver and gold craft woven by a master craftsman, created by a master craftsman. So right here, it talks about, we see our comparison words, first of all, which are just so. So we have the one thing being compared just so with the other thing. And it talks about how she made his hair, I'm assuming she means on his head and his chest, bare chest, red golden, like silver and gold being crafted by a master craftsman. And then it says, just so she lavished beauty over Odysseus's head and shoulders. So how golden and shiny a beautiful piece of sculpture is with those precious metals, that's how beautiful and golden and shiny Odysseus looks after this fancy bath. And then he goes to speak to his wife. But as you would expect, I'm sure Odysseus was expecting Penelope to just be beside herself and so excited and, oh my God, honey, you're home. This is the best day of my life. And that's not how she's been acting. So pay attention to this interaction now and how it is exactly that Penelope is welcoming Odysseus home. And think about, again, why she might be acting this way. All right, so we left off here where he goes and he sits in the same chair by the pillar facing his silent wife. We're down here on line 1552. He sat then in the same chair by the pillars facing his silent wife and said, strange woman, the immortals of Olympus made you harder than any. Who else in the world would keep aloof as you do from her husband if he returned to her from years of trouble, cast on his own land in the 20th year? Nurse, make up a bed for me to sleep on. Her heart is iron in her breast. Penelope spoke to Odysseus now. She said, strange man, if man you are. This is no pride on my part, no scorn for you, not even wonder merely. I know so well how he appeared boarding the ship for Troy, but all the same, make up his bed for him, Euryloca. Place it outside the bedchamber that my lord built with his own hands. Pile the big bed with fleeces, rugs, and sheets of purest linen. With this, she tried him to the breaking point, and he turned on her in a flash, raging. Woman, by heaven, you've stung me now. Who dared to move my bed? No builder had the skill for that, unless a god came down to turn the trick. No mortal in his best days could budge it with a crowbar. This is our pact and pledge, our secret sign built into that bed, my handiwork and no one else's. An old trunk of olive grew like a pillar on the building plot, and I laid out our bedroom round that tree, lined up the stone walls, built the walls and roof, gave it a doorway and smooth-fitting doors. Then I lopped off all the silvery leaves and branches, hewed and shaped that stump from the roots up into a bedpost, drilled it, let it serve as a model for the rest. I planned them all, inlaid them all with silver, gold, and ivory, and stretched a bed between, a pliant web of oxhide thongs dyed crimson. There is our sign. I know no more. Could someone else's hand have sawn that trunk and dragged the frame away? So remember, the episode is called Penelope's Test. And Odysseus here is very angry about something to do with their bed. And this is what Penelope is using for her test. They have a secret between them as husband and wife that no one else should have known. And when she says something about their bed, Odysseus gets really, really mad. I want you to explain to me what exactly it is that Penelope is using here to test her husband. How is it that Penelope is using this comment about their bed to test Odysseus? Alrighty, folks. So hopefully you understood what exactly it was that Penelope has going on here, why this comment of hers enraged Odysseus and how this was a test for him. So she says right here to him, make up his bed for him, Euryloca. Place the bed outside of the bedchamber. And only when she says, all right, my maid, take the bed outside the bedroom and put it outside the room, basically telling him to like go sleep on the couch, right? But when she makes the comment about moving the bed, he knows that something is off, and he goes so into a rage because their secret, their pact as husband and wife that no one else would have known, was how this bed was built. And then he talks about it. So I kind of want to show you, draw for you a little bit. I know you guys definitely miss my whiteboard art. So I'll show you a little bit of what he was talking about. So here on the side is the text that I'm speaking of. And he says, an old trunk of olive grew like a pillar on the building plot. So before they even built their house, there was this big olive tree. And he says, I laid our bedroom around that tree. So he built their house around this massive tree. So it's like inside their home. And he says, I lined up stone walls, built the walls and roof, gave it a doorway and smooth fitting doors. Then I lopped off all the silvery leaves and branches. So oh, that was a little excessive. He says, I cut it down. I cut it down to just a stump of a tree, and that was left inside our home. So this part of this olive tree was just a stump now. He says, I lopped off all the silvery leaves and branches, hewed and shaped that stump from the roots up into a bedpost, drilled it and let it serve as a model for the rest. So he modeled the rest of their bedpost after that one post of wood. So now there are 4 of them in the home. And he says, that is where I put our bed. He says, I planned them all and inlaid them all with silver, gold, and ivory and stretched a bed between them, a pliant web of oxhide thongs dyed crimson. So in between those 4 bedposts is where he strung their bed and where they slept every night as husband and wife. He said, there's our sign. I know no more. Could someone else's hand have sawn that trunk and dragged the frame away? So when she said to the maid, take the bed and move it outside the room, he knows that it's impossible to move the bed without this pillar, which is built into the house, being like sawed away and manually like take some serious manual labor to move it. So that is their secret as husband and wife. And for anyone else, if Penelope had just said, oh, take the bed and move it out of the room, that wouldn't have been a big deal. But for Odysseus, him knowing this secret of how their bed was made, it made him furious. And that is the test. Him reacting the way that he did shows Penelope, good, it really is my husband. While we're on the subject of that, Penelope felt the need to test Odysseus. And at the very beginning, it said, test him to see if he really is her husband. So I want you to make not really a prediction, but I want you to think for a second and respond. Why do you think that Penelope felt the need to test her husband? Why not just fall into his loving arms after so many years apart? Why did she feel the need to make him prove himself to her? Okie dokie. So there are quite a few things you could have said. I'll go over a few possibilities here in case you were still a little confused or not so sure or want to hear what other people might have said. So at the beginning of the episode, it says, Penelope tests Odysseus to make sure that he is her husband. A couple of reasons for that might be that when Odysseus came home after this 20 years of being away, he didn't look like himself at all. He looked like the old beggar man in disguise from Athena. And only right before the battle with the suitors did he take this glamour off and unveil himself and reveal himself as Odysseus. So if I were Penelope, I'd be a little bit confused as to how that happened and why this man was 1 second an old guy and now he kind of looks like my husband. Also, Odysseus has been away for 20 years. Take a look at your parents. Go find a picture of your parents 20 years ago and now, right? They're gonna look a little bit different in 20 years. So not only has she not seen him for 20 years, but now he shows up looking one way a second and magically another way another minute. So she's a little suspicious about that. The other thing that we really know about Penelope for sure this whole time is that she is a faithful wife. She is a faithful wife. She has been spending 20 years believing in her heart that Odysseus is alive. She would not marry again, even though no one really would have blamed her after he's gone for 20 years. She has not once been unfaithful to him. So for some random dude to show up after 20 years, be like, honey, I'm home, let's go to bed, adult nighttime activities. She wants to make sure that she is actually about to be with her real husband. She doesn't want to take the chance that this is some imposter. And what do we know, if anything, about the Greek pantheon, about the gods and goddesses? That they love to go down to earth, disguise themselves as a regular person. That's why we have this whole code of Xenia. We don't know if the person at my door is a god in disguise. So Penelope is making sure that she's not about to sleep with Zeus or Apollo or someone like that, that it really is her husband, finally their home after 20 years. So she is protecting herself as a wife, making sure she stays faithful to her husband, and making sure that he is who he says he is. So finally, when he reacts to her and her comment about moving the bed, she knows, oh, thank God, no one else could possibly have known that information except Odysseus. And if we look back at what she said before the bed comment, we see that it lines up with those ideas. So she said over here, right here in the middle of the page, strange man, if man you are, right? So she's not sure if he is a mortal or a god or what the heck is going on. Strange man, if man you are, this is no pride on my part or scorn for you or even wonder. I know so well how he appeared boarding the ship for Troy. So remember, Athena has just made Odysseus beautiful. Not that she's necessarily changed his opinion, but she's made him look younger. She's made him look real good. And Penelope says, an hour ago you were an old man. Then you looked like an aged version of my husband while you fought the suitors. And now you look just like he did 20 years ago. And that's weird. That's not normal, right? So she was protecting herself and making sure 100% that it is her husband Odysseus before any marital reunion can happen. All right, so we left off down here with Odysseus being real ticked off about the bed. So we're gonna start right here on line 1591. There's our sign. I know no more. Could someone else's hand have sawn that trunk and dragged the frame away? Their secret. As she heard it told, her knees grew tremulous and weak. Her heart failed her. With eyes brimming tears, she ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck and kissing him, murmuring, do not rage at me, Odysseus. No one ever matched your caution. Think what difficulty the gods gave. They denied us life together in our prime and flowering years, kept us from crossing into age together. Forgive me, don't be angry. I could not welcome you with love on sight. I armed myself long ago against the frauds of men, impostors who might come, and all those many whose underhanded ways bring evil on. But here and now, what sign could be so clear as this of our own bed? No other man has ever laid eyes on it. Only my own slave actress that my father sent with me as a gift. She kept our door. You make my stiff heart know that I am yours. Now from his breast into his eyes the ache of longing mounted, and he wept at last. His dear wife, clear and faithful in his arms, longed for as the sun-warmed earth is longed for by a swimmer, spent in rough water where his ship went down under Poseidon's blows, gale winds and tons of sea. Few men can keep alive through a big surf, to crawl clotted with brine on kindly beaches, enjoy, knowing the abyss behind. And so she too rejoiced, her gaze upon her husband, her white arms wrapped round him, pressed as though forever. So finally, they get to relax in each other's presence, give themselves a little cry, and hug it out like man and wife. And the very last thing that we have to know to kind of tie this whole story up in a bow, to get a resolution really, is this little last blurb of information, the ending. So let's just read this last sentence together. The ending. Odysseus is reunited with his father Laertes. Athena commands that peace prevail between Odysseus and the relatives of the slain suitors. Odysseus has regained his family and his kingdom. So this middle sentence is kind of important because after the battle with the suitors, one thing that a lot of people think about is, well, Odysseus was getting revenge on the suitors for the wrong that they had done him. But by killing all of the suitors, isn't that just going to start another cycle of revenge? All their friends and families now being angry at Odysseus. Well, that's where Athena comes in. And here at the end, she intervenes and says, okay, that was it. No more. Everyone call it good. Peace must prevail here in Ithaca, and all the families of the suitors obviously obey the words of the gods. And Odysseus has finally regained his family and his kingdom. So we come full circle on that hero's journey idea. We have resolution, all the tangled plot lines are tied up. No suitors' families are going to be coming after Odysseus. And we have the arrival back to the whole status quo, but upgraded. His life is back to normal now. He's king of Ithaca again. He has his wife. He has his son. Everything has come full circle like before he left on his adventure, but different now. Obviously, he's older. He's gone through some stuff. He lost all his comrades. There was a victory in Troy. He battled the suitors. He regained the love and trust of his community and his wife. So the same, but slightly different. So that was it. That was our story of the Odyssey. Hard to believe that thousands of years ago this was written and that people memorized it, that all this was in someone's head and they could stand up in one go and recite it. Those rhapsodes or minstrels have a crazy good memory. Alrighty, folks. So finish up this video and I will talk to you soon about what we're going to head into next.